Sophie.
Hi, Sin.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Souls Mixtape, Episode 1.
What?
I know! Sophie, what is the Souls Mixtape?
So this is a new series that Sin and I have started because when we do videos on the Souls games, they tend to be on, like, big conceptual things.
Mm-hmm.
But we also get little questions in the comments or on Discord or on Patreon or during chats and things like that with people asking us, like, hey, what was the deal with, like, that little thing over there? Or, like, what was the deal with this boss? Or what was the deal with this line of dialogue? Or what do you think of this? Or something like that.
Yeah.
And we've decided to kind of start addressing them in this series, which we're just calling Souls Mixtape because it's not about any specific game.
Yeah.
So we're starting by answering questions that our patrons have asked us, and after that we're going to start answering questions that we're getting on YouTube or on Discord or other channels like that. If you are a patron, we will always get to your question first, but we will endeavour to get to every question that we are asked. And this series will just run until people stop asking us questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophie. The first question is by Wave Sounds. And the question is, where do you think the make contact gesture comes from? How does it work?
Well, Sim, we've talked about make contact a few times.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I mean, there are several theories out there. Some say it comes from the maths, and, it represents a triangle.
Yeah.
Others say the sort of motion you make moving your hands from, like, left to right or right to the left. You kind of follow the motion of the stars and the sky. Where it comes from? Probably choir?
You get make contact from a corpse on a balcony,
Yeah.
and the corpse is doing the make contact gesture. And if you look at the name of the gesture, like, it's literally make contact. And if you stand on that balcony and you kind of mimic the make contact gesture after you get it, what you'll do is your arms will move from one side of, like, the balcony sort of viewing window to the other side. It always, to me, gave the impression that what that person was doing is they were literally, like, holding their arms up and they were getting in touch / making contact with, like, what was happening in the sky at night. And the motion of their arms was, like, as the stars in the night sky moved by, as the moon moved by, they were following it with their arms to try to, like, stay focused on it. And that's why when the red moon hit, they got completely fried, because they were completely in touch with the night sky. And that's also presumably why when you do it in front of the Mensis brain, it gives you the moon rune, because you do that and it's like, oh, moon, okay, that's what you're doing. You're following the moon with your arms.
Yeah, so that's interesting that the brain of Mensis recognizes that gesture, because I don't think the brain itself is a member of the choir. Don't think it went to that school. And it's wearing, like, a little jacket and a little hat. It's
It would
very
be very
cute.
little. It would be huge.
Oh. But yeah, so that would mean that this is kind of like a universal gesture of, I guess, the great ones or some realm out there that the choir kind of discovered. They didn't really invent it.
Yeah, like, you can say, I don't know if it's, like, universal, but, like, the great ones seem relatively, like, kind of close to people in a sense. Like, they're not completely unknowable. Even though they have that Lovecraftian aesthetic, like, what they actually want is quite relatable. And we know that, like, they're connected to the stars and the moon and everything, so I'm assuming it's common across, like, the various great ones and the various civilizations that you might want to describe the motion of the stars somehow.
So where would the choir have learned this from? Like, which great one would they have discovered the make contact gesture
they might
from?
have got it from Willem.
Oh,
Because the choir
Mm-hmm.
follow Willem's example, and Willem's the guy who sits on the lunarium,
Yeah.
staring at the moon all night, trying to get himself tuned into the moon. And they're like, we can do that better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, you know how the choir knew Abratus?
Yeah.
Do you think she showed them the moon do you think she showed them make contact?
He's probably too busy sulking.
Oh. They're like, "Can you please show us how to make contact?" She's like, "No. No way." Yeah. Thank you, Sophie. So let's move on to the next one by George Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on Chart Therma's theory about the holy medium found in the labyrinth being the remains of Lawrence?
Okay, so this comes from a line that Alfred has essentially, where he says, like, the holy medium of blood healing is venerated in the main cathedral, right? If you
Mhm.
go into the main cathedral, there is indeed, like, Lawrence's skull is on display and it's being venerated, right?
Mhm.
The question there is, like, I don't think Lawrence's skull qualifies as a medium.
Right.
Like, arguably, if you were getting super, like, abstract, you could say, well, Lawrence himself is kind of the medium of the healing because he's the guy who introduced it, right?
Right.
But the thing is, Alfred has another line where he says, once a group of young Bergenworth scholars discovered a holy medium deep within the tomb, this led to the founding of the healing church and the establishment of blood healing, right?
Right.
Like, they're talking about the Bergenworth scholars, not the healing church, finding the medium of blood healing, which is just the blood, and that leading to the founding of the church.
Yeah, so it's like it comes beforehand.
He's saying that blood healing itself is venerated in the church because, like, the blood healing simultaneously, it's healing you, but it's also allowing you to have these ecstatic experiences.
Mhm.
But, like, it literally, timeline wise, makes zero sense that the
Mhm.
Bergenworth scholars find Lawrence's skull before the church is founded.
Yeah.
Because for the church to be founded, Lawrence needs to be alive to found it.
Yeah. Or does he?
The medium of blood healing is the blood itself. Like, they use medium to describe blood a lot, like Erden needs blood as a medium. The blood is the medium of the healing. It's not like there's not like an object that is the medium.
Yeah, that's right. The next question is by Kirk Novak. If you could get an accurate and canon answer to any Bloodborne lore question, what would it be?
I think it would be like the exact chronology of the Red Moons.
How so?
Well, we've talked about this quite a bit before, but like, there's been at least one Red Moon before.
Yeah, yeah.
But also, a lot of things are tied to the Red Moon happening before the game. So it's like either there was one really, really action packed Red Moon
Mm-hmm.
that like involved that like would have involved like the hunter's dream being conceived, German going to the dream, Lawrence leaving, Dura becoming a hunter,
Mm-hmm.
and old Yana being burned all at pretty much simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Was that what happened, or like is it kind of implying there were two of them? And I think honestly, I don't think there is an answer. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is something that's just come out of repeated rewrites.
It would be interesting to know how long, kind of like, how many years has the beast hunts have been happening over? Just like how long has this whole thing been going on, you know?
Well, that's like there's a cut line where the Bergenworth Watchman says it's been 20 years, but it's cut.
Yeah, but has it been 20 years? Seems like, hmm.
No, but I think the thing about Yarnum and Beast Hunts is like Beast Hunts are just part of their culture. It's been going on forever because
Mm-hmm.
they literally live above a labyrinth full of blood that turns you into a beast.
Right.
And like we've talked about this before, but like again, timeline wise, it's awfully strange that there would be someone who's like a beast hunter in a city that didn't have a beast problem until the healing church showed up.
Yeah, because
It's
the
like, oh,
hunters
that's
have been there
lucky.
for a while,
Yeah, the
and
hunter
like,
thing is
yeah,
quite odd, and like Canehurst, who are like
hmm,
also messing around with the blood, like they have their knights and everything.
that's true.
Old Yarnum, like there is a church there. There is the worship of the chalices and everything.
Hmm.
I think it's a case of like beasts always existed in Yarnum, but they
Hmm.
were not like a plague. In the same way that like Yarnum was kind of always a xenophobic, inward-looking place, but what happens with the healing church is it just brings that out even more because they become even more paranoid.
Right. The next question is from Mina Erickson. Oh, okay. It's not Bloodborne. Why do you think Izalith betrayed the gods and invaded the undead burg with the demons?
It's sort of not clear whether like the demons of Izalith represent like a unified sort of like this is the witch of Izalith's army, this is the witch of Izalith's people, in the same way that like the Silver Knights and the Black Knights represent like this is Gwyn's army, right?
Yeah.
Because they could just be like the witch accidentally created a bunch of weird monsters that are walking around now.
Yeah.
And that to me is sort of like, I think it's probably closer to that because the key thing about the Witch of Izalith and what she did is she lost control of it.
Hmm.
Like we were talking just then about Bloodborne, and it's like the Healing Church creates a whole lot of beasts. But
Yeah.
like that doesn't mean the beasts are the Healing Church's army. It means the Healing Church accidentally created a whole lot of
Yeah.
beasts.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
kind of how I see the demons in Dark Souls. So it's like some of them are just wandering around. Some of them are like posing a threat, so Gwyn has to send his knights in to put them down. But then there's just some other demons hanging out over here, not kind of bothering anyone. Like presumably the demons in Undead Asylum don't work for Gwyn. They're just kind of there. Like
Yeah.
and like a asylum demon when it fights you, like it breaks the asylum apart. Like it's not.
Yeah.
You can kind of view asylum demon as like, is this a guard dog? And like kind of, but also like the asylum is in the middle of nowhere and there's hollows outside the asylum just standing there. All this is sort of leading to is like I don't know if like the Capra demon and the Taurus demon are part of like the spearhead of an invasion force into Undead Burg as much as they
Hmm.
are just like two weird guys who showed up and started breaking things.
Yeah.
And like when you talk to the undead merchant, like he's kind of cavalier about it. He doesn't say we're being attacked by demons. He says like, "Oh, this goat thing moved in downstairs."
Yeah.
And he specifically calls out like it just moved in. And then if you look at like the description on the key that you get from the Capra demon, it's like, yeah, the thieves and the wild dogs in the undead burg, they're the servants of the Capra demon.
What we're doing is just breaking into the Capra demon's apartment.
Essentially, yeah, like the Capra demon is just like it's the strongest thing in the area. It's moved in and taken over.
Hmm.
I don't think the demons are like the servants of the Witch of Izalith. I think she
Hmm.
created them. But like the whole point of it is it's chaos. It can't be tamed. And like I think that's
Hmm.
also why like Quelag and Quellan, like their response to that is that they fuse themselves into demons to better control them.
Mm, yeah, right.
It's not like, oh, cool, I've got my army of demon spiders. It's I actually need to fuse myself into the demon spider to even try controlling it. Yeah, I don't think there's an invasion. I think it's just like two weird monsters got created and wandered up to the surface, and they hung out there because nothing was threatening them.
Yeah, they just want to live a little, you know? Um, JC is asking, why the primordial serpents? As in, why did they come into being specifically and last as long as they did?
Hmm. Wilson,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't thought about Dark Souls ever since Elden Ring came out because I've been
Yeah,
just
because you
like
love Elden Ring so
engulfed.
much. It's just,
In
yeah.
Elden Ring lore, just thinking about it
Yeah,
constantly.
yeah, that's,
So
yeah. You actually have so much to say about Elden Ring that you've barely
yeah,
been in any of the discussions about it. Because you
exactly.
just
It's just
wouldn't
too.
stop talking. It would just
Yeah,
be, every episode would be 6 hours long. You still haven't
yeah.
finished the game because you're still poring over every detail of Elden Ring.
Yeah, yeah. It's,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
when you play Skyrim,
yeah,
you don't finish Skyrim, you just do all the side
yeah.
quests for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you'll finish Elden Ring when you finish it, alright?
exactly.
Until you will
Exactly.
memorize every single pixel of that game, and then you'll
Yeah.
finally try to beat Malekith.
Where do you think they come from?
Berserk. Okay, so the serpents. There's
Yes.
10 of them.
And we know that because of the ending cutscene?
Yeah, yeah. You encounter directly 2 of them in Dark Souls, and then if you take the Dark Lord ending, it adds an extra 8.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing about the serpents is, Frampt is the one who's on the side of, like, maintaining the Age of Fire and linking the fire and everything. Karth is the one who's on the side of, like, we have to let it all die, let the dark come in, let the
Mm-hmm.
fire fade. Right. So you might interpret it as like, okay, well, there's 2 serpents and they both have 2 different points of view, and that's what they represent. But
Mm-hmm.
um, what Karth says, and this is backed up in that Dark Lord ending, is that initially all of the serpents were on the side of letting the fire fade and letting the Age of Dark begin.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
specifically says, like, but one of them, who was Frampt, lost his senses and befriended Gwyn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're on the side of the dark. There's a bunch of weird half references to them in Dark Souls 3, where you see statues of entities that have the Primordial Serpent's head, but their bodies are either a winged humanoid or like a weird anteater.
Yeah.
And it's like completely unclear if those are supposed to be what they actually do look like below the neck and we just don't see it. Or
Yeah.
if those are kind of like the statues in Bloodborne, where it's like someone kind of saw this thing and then filled
Mm-hmm.
in the gaps with like
Yeah.
other animals that they'd seen.
They're like
Like,
cryptids.
yeah, it's like maybe the sculptor never saw a primordial serpent below the neck and just invented a body for it. Like, it's completely unclear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch in the Lothric archives, and there's a bunch in the Ring City.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of makes sense in the Lothric archives because that's where this like mysterious scholar was who misled the prince. I regret a lot of things I said in the sort of mid to late 2010s about
Okay.
Dark Souls, but like I've always seen like the scholar in Dark Souls 3 as being like either it's Karth or it's Karth's agent,
Okay.
because Karth is the one who has like misled the people of Ulasil to embrace the dark. He misleads the 4 kings to embrace the dark. He tries to do the same thing to you. So it's sort of, he's got form, and it's like, oh, convenient that like also someone's put a giant statue of a primordial serpent in the Lothric archives.
Yeah, do you think Kat's
Yeah.
agent was like, oh, the serpents are really, really pretty? You haven't seen one, but they have wings? They definitely have a body.
Are you saying he's using filters?
Yes.
That's sort of like what they are and what they're trying to do. The history
Mm-hmm.
of the primordial serpents, which is the question, is a little muddier.
Mm-hmm.
Karth talks about like them finding the first flame and everything in a way that suggests like he was there, like he knows it. He talks about like, this is the history that has kind of been suppressed, but here is what really happened. And that lines up with there being the statues of them in the Ringed City, because the Ringed City is like, this is the place like at the start of everything when Gwyn first kind of corrals the humans into one place, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
Ringed City, like, it's connected to like the Abyss and like the beginnings of the people that we know as the Dark Wraiths and everything. It's like, all right, that lines up. They're very, very old. So you might think, like, are they from, like, the before time? Like, are they from,
Mm-hmm.
like, are they like dragons? Because
Yeah.
there are the silver and gold serpent rings in Dark Souls 1 that call out, like, hey, a serpent is an imperfect dragon. So
Mm-hmm.
are the primordial serpents like, hey, this thing, it's like a kind of fucked up failed dragon, or like a transitional state that dragons evolved from, or something like that? The thing about the dragons in Dark Souls is that, like, they can have individual agendas, right? Seath has an individual agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Sin has this, like, individual thing where, like, he's poisoned a city.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of their agenda is just chilling. Like, the one at Ash Lake just wants to be left
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
The ones in the Dragon Airy probably just want to be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing with them is, like, they're not trying to push you in the direction of, like, fire or dark, because that's alien to them. That's a whole. Those are concepts that were introduced to the world after the dragons had come into being. So the dragons
Mm-hmm.
sort of represent, like, eternity, stasis, unchanging, grey fog. Like, it's nothing. It's not one or the other. They're outside of the cycle, and they're actually kind of annoyed that there is a cycle. Right.
Right. Yeah.
The primordial serpents are very much not like that. They are specifically trying to get you to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like, the best way to sort of look at it is, like, at the start of Dark Souls 1, when you see, like, the figures appearing from the fire that are the humans, and then there's this narration that goes, and from the dark they came, right? It's not clear when the humans came from, but if you imagine, like, I think the primordial serpents are probably from, like, the same time as that. Like, they were things that were, like, kind of waiting in the darkness, or were born from the darkness, or something like that. And they kind of, like, slithered out along with the people. And that's where this all comes from, and that's why they're trying to pull the world back toward dark.
Okay.
The other thing about them, interestingly, is, like, they don't actually seem to be immortal, because Yulia's got that line in Dark Souls 3 where she talks about Karth being dead.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
presumably at one point, Karth did actually die. So, like,
Yeah.
even though he is this ancient thing that is, like, older than humanity itself, he still died at some point, and it's never ever, like, elaborated on how that happened.
Yeah.
Did he die of old age? Like, because there's no other serpents left after 1. We never see them again. So it's possible that
Mm-hmm.
just, like, there have been so many successive ages that they've all died.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been that, like, when, if the fire was linked so many times that, like, they just disappeared with the dark or something like that. I don't know.
The next one is by Niam. Oh my god! Why did Ludwig kill Maria?
Well, you know.
Because he was jealous.
Yeah?
He was jealous and fragile, and she was super duper cool, and he couldn't stand it. So he took her out while she was taking a nap.
Okay. And I need you to clarify, was he a horse at the time?
I'm still doing research. He may or
Okay,
may not
okay.
have been a horse at the time.
Okay.
More research
okay.
is needed.
Okay.
Okay, next question again by Niam is, how did Aldia fuse himself into the fire without kindling it?
Well, what do you think?
I have no idea. I mean, Aldia is a little bit strange looking.
A little. A little.
I just assumed that's how he always looked, TBH. We have a lot
I
of
think
strange...
he always looked like that.
Yeah, because we have a lot of strange, a lot of interesting looking creatures running around, and that's how they've always been. So I just...
He's Vendrick's brother.
I honestly never really questioned it. I'm just like, you do your thing, girl, That will make you happy. That will make you happy.
You think Vendrick's just standing in this massive cackling, like, ah! Wooden root monster with fire coming out of him behind it. And there's something a little odd about the king's brother. Getting a vibe.
Getting a vibe. Yeah. What do you think,
okay.
Sophie?
Okay. So, this is again something that's like, there's not an in-game explanation for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like there's a bit where you find out what Aldia did to himself. But, like, the thing about Aldia is he specifies that, like, he is obsessed with the undead curse, right?
Okay, yeah.
And that he tried to break out of the cycle of the curse and he failed.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Dark Souls games, part of the undead curse is that you are bound to the bonfires. So it's like Aldia, like, question mark, he was doing something. And he tried to break out of the cycle of the undead curse. And he ended up somehow, like, fused into. It's like he exists in the link between the undead and the bonfires, rather than the bonfires themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of ties into, like, some of the stuff that Aldia has done, like creating the Forlorn. Whereas, like, the Forlorn are these people who, like, they're half in and half out of existence. It's like Aldia is obsessed with getting outside of the cycle and the relationship that the undead have to, like, the dark and the fire, which is represented by the bonfires, but he can't quite do it, so he ends up trapped in this, like, halfway space. So he no longer, like, properly exists, except he is sort of trapped, like, as a consciousness in that link, the link that he's trying to get away from. And that's presumably what he means by, like, I failed.
Good job, everyone! Yay!
Yeah, so that was the first episode of this series, and it seemed to go pretty well.
Yeah.
Yep, we still have quite a few patron questions that we're going to get to. And then when we're done with those, we'll start looking to Discord and YouTube. So if you've got any questions, I'll leave them in the comments here and we'll try to get to them.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Sin.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to the mixtape.
Who sent the questions.
You already thanked them.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Sin.
Thank you, everybody who gave us questions. And
thank you, everyone, for listening
to the mixtape. And see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.